What would you do if your morning routine, something as simple and healthy as going for a run, turned into your family's worst nightmare? In Athens, Georgia, that nightmare became reality when a 22-year-old nursing student named Lakyn Riley laced up her running shoes for what would be her final jog. Today, we're diving into a case that shook not just a college town, but an entire nation. A story that forces us to question the safety we take for granted in our most familiar spaces and challenges our understanding of trust in our communities. As we unravel the events of that fateful February morning, we'll explore how a young woman's tragic death became the center of a national conversation, forever changing the way we think about campus safety and the vulnerability we all face in our daily lives. Athens, Georgia, a quintessential college town where ancient oak trees line the streets and historic red brick buildings stand as silent witnesses to generations of students pursuing their dreams. Here, at the heart of the classic city, Lakyn Riley was living hers. The vibrant 22-year-old had already accomplished what many young nurses-to-be aspire to, securing a spot in Augusta University's competitive nursing program. Even after transferring from the University of Georgia to pursue her calling in nursing, Lakyn maintained deep connections to the UGA community. She remained an active member of her sorority, her bright smile and warm personality a familiar sight around campus. Her daily routine reflected the dedication that had brought her this far. Early morning runs through the university's sprawling grounds, a practice that helped her stay focused and energized for the demanding nursing curriculum ahead. The university grounds where Lakyn ran were considered a sanctuary by students and faculty alike. The winding paths near Lake Herrick, sheltered by towering pines and flowering dogwoods, were popular among joggers and nature enthusiasts. It was the kind of place where students felt safe enough to run alone, where the biggest concerns were usually upcoming exams or weekend plans. No one could have imagined that these peaceful trails, where thousands of students had safely exercised before, would become the scene of such a horrific crime. On February 22nd, like any other morning, Lakyn Riley laced up her running shoes and headed out for her regular exercise routine. The crisp morning air and quiet campus paths beckoned as she began her run. But this ordinary Thursday would soon turn into every community's worst nightmare. When Lakyn failed to return from her morning run, her friend grew increasingly worried. Minutes turned to hours, and unanswered calls went straight to voicemail. This wasn't like Lakyn. She was responsible, reliable, always letting people know where she was. By early afternoon, her friend's concern had escalated into genuine fear, prompting a call to the police that would launch an intensive search across the university grounds. Law enforcement responded swiftly, combing through the campus's extensive network of trails and wooded areas. Their search focused on Lakyn's known running routes, with officers methodically working their way through the sprawling university grounds. As the hours ticked by, hope began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of dread. The devastating discovery came later that day near Lake Herrick. In a forested area that countless students had passed through before, officers found Lakyn's body. The peaceful sanctuary of the lake area, usually filled with the sounds of nature and students enjoying outdoor activities, had become the scene of an unthinkable tragedy. Emergency medical responders rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Lakyn Riley, the dedicated nursing student with a bright future ahead of her, had been violently taken from this world. The investigation moved at lightning speed as law enforcement pieced together the final moments of Lakyn Riley's life. Campus surveillance footage became a crucial element, with investigators meticulously tracking movement through the university grounds that fateful morning. The cameras had captured snapshots of both Lakyn's regular running route and, crucially, a suspicious figure following not far behind. What struck investigators immediately was the evidence of a violent struggle. Physical evidence at the scene told a horrifying story. Lakyn had fought back against her attacker with everything she had. Her determination to survive left investigators with vital DNA evidence under her fingernails, a silent witness to her final moments of resistance. A single thumbprint found on her phone screen would later prove to be another crucial piece of the puzzle. Within 24 hours of discovering Lakyn's body, the evidence led investigators to Antonio Ybarra. The combination of community tips, surveillance footage, and forensic evidence painted a clear picture. The physical evidence was particularly damning. The DNA found under Lakyn's fingernails was a match to Ybarra, and his thumbprint on her phone screen placed him directly at the scene. The charges brought against Ybarra reflected the brutality of the crime. Multiple serious felonies were filed: murder, kidnapping, aggravated assault, and aggravated battery. Additional charges of hindering an emergency telephone call and tampering with evidence suggested attempts to cover up the crime. A charge of being a peeping Tom hinted at possible predatory behavior leading up to the attack. In the courtroom, prosecutors presented their case with chilling clarity. They argued that Lakyn's death occurred when she refused to become a victim of sexual assault, painting a picture of a young woman who fought bravely for her life. The evidence they assembled told a story of premeditation, violence, and a tragic end to a promising young life. Behind the brutal attack that shocked Athens lies the troubling history of Jose Antonio Ybarra. In September 2022, he first entered the United States near El Paso, Texas, where Border Patrol agents apprehended him. Despite his unauthorized entry, he was released on parole, a decision that would later face intense scrutiny. Ybarra's path after release reveals a pattern of concerning behavior. In New York City, he faced charges related to endangering a child under 17 years old, along with motor vehicle violations. Yet somehow, he made his way to Athens, Georgia, where his presence would ultimately intersect with tragedy. The trial proceedings have taken an unusual turn, with Ybarra waiving his right to a jury trial. This means Judge H. Patrick Haggard alone will determine his fate. While the prosecution initially had the option to pursue the death penalty, they've instead chosen to seek life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In the courtroom, prosecutor Sheila Ross has built a compelling case around physical evidence and DNA analysis. Her opening statements painted a haunting picture of the crime, asserting that Riley lost her life while resisting a sexual assault. The prosecution's strategy relies heavily on the DNA evidence found under Riley's fingernails and that crucial thumbprint on her phone screen. Meanwhile, Ybarra's defense team, led by attorney Dustin Kirby, has attempted to cast doubt on the prosecution's narrative, arguing that the evidence against their client is merely circumstantial. They face an uphill battle against the weight of forensic evidence and the prosecution's methodically constructed timeline of events. The brutal murder of Lakyn Riley quickly transcended local news, igniting a firestorm of national debate about immigration policies and campus safety across America. The revelation that her alleged killer was an undocumented immigrant who had previously been detained and released transformed a heartbreaking crime into a powerful political symbol. Within days of Riley's death, her name echoed through the halls of Congress. During President Biden's State of the Union address, the gravity of this case came into stark focus when Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's voice cut through the chamber, demanding, "Say her name." The president's response acknowledged the tragedy while highlighting the complex intersection of immigration policy and public safety. The case sparked immediate legislative action. Georgia representatives introduced the Lakyn Riley Act, aimed at transforming how law enforcement handles immigration-related crimes. The bill specifically targeted policies around detaining undocumented individuals accused of theft-related offenses, marking a direct response to the circumstances surrounding Riley's death. The tragic story found its way into presidential campaign speeches, with Donald Trump referencing Riley's case during his Republican National Convention acceptance speech. He used the incident to underscore his stance on immigration reform, promising to prevent similar tragedies in the future. For the Athens community and college campuses nationwide, Riley's death has prompted serious discussions about student safety. Universities across the country have begun re-evaluating their security measures, particularly around campus recreational areas and running trails. Her story has become a catalyst for change, forcing communities to confront difficult questions about safety, immigration, and justice in America. As we reflect on Lakyn Riley's tragic story, we're confronted with profound questions about safety, trust, and the fabric of our communities. Her death has left an indelible mark on Athens, forever changing how students think about their daily routines and personal security. The ripples of this tragedy continue to spread far beyond the university grounds, touching lives across the nation. These are the cases that challenge us to look deeper, to question our assumptions, and to consider how we can better protect one another. For those seeking to understand more about this ongoing case and its implications, you'll find extensive resources, including detailed timelines, community responses, and expert analysis at therealcrimediary.com. In our next episode, we'll explore another case that shook a tight-knit community to its core. The mysterious disappearance of a local business owner that exposed a web of secrets nobody saw coming. Until then, I encourage you to share your thoughts on the Lakyn Riley case and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts online. The conversation continues at therealcrimediary.com, where we're committed to understanding these complex cases that shape our world. Remember, behind every headline is a human story that deserves to be told with care and dignity. I'll see you next time. Hey listeners, welcome back to The Real Crime Diary. I'm your host, Sean Dupree. If you tuned in last time, we had a deep dive into the disturbing history of power abuse across different eras, looking at the connection between dominance, control, and how it plays out even today. We touched on scandals from the past and compared them with some modern-day examples, showing how these patterns of abuse, unfortunately, persist. One of the most insightful tools we've explored to understand this is my book, Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's not just a historical account, but an interdisciplinary approach to understanding why this keeps happening. We draw from history, philosophy, and modern case studies to explain how figures like Dominique Pellico, Harvey Weinstein, and others have exploited their positions of power for their own gain, often protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Recap of last interaction. In our last live stream, we discussed how libertinism, philosophically introduced by figures like Marquis de Sade, has shaped the way power and pleasure have been entangled throughout history. This concept ties directly into how figures like Weinstein operated, as we saw parallels between de Sade's fictional characters and the way powerful men manipulated their victims in real life. You guys had some amazing comments, asking how societal structures have allowed these behaviors to go unchecked for so long. It's a crucial question, and one that the book addresses deeply. Why this book is valuable. Now, what's powerful about Power, Pleasure, and Pain is its ability to break down these historical patterns and link them to the present. You're not just reading about ancient Rome or Enlightenment philosophy, you're seeing how these ideologies are alive today. The book uncovers how sexual violence and control have been systematically woven into the fabric of societies from ancient times right up to the modern era. It's about understanding not just the individual predators, but the systems that protect them, whether it's in royal courts, religious institutions, or today's corporate and entertainment worlds. Through these historical lenses, we also explore movements like #MeToo that are beginning to dismantle these structures. The fight for justice is far from over, but as the book demonstrates, we are in the midst of a cultural shift where legal reforms are finally addressing these long-standing issues. It's more than a history lesson. It's a guide to understanding and supporting change today. What's next? If you want to dive deeper, I suggest picking up Power, Pleasure, and Pain, a study of abuse through time. It's available now, and trust me, it will change the way you think about power, pleasure, and control. We've even got some exclusive content coming up on the channel where we'll be exploring the book's case studies in even more detail, so stay tuned for that. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to The Real Crime Diary so you don't miss any updates. Let's keep this conversation going, because understanding the past is key to changing the future.